I'm Darlene Miller, President of Permac Industries and the very proud winner of the U.S. Chamber Small Business of the Year for 2008 for the entire USA. Together with my most dedicated employees, some of here who are here today, and without them we wouldn't exist, I'm proud to be a business owner here in Minnesota. Permac Industries is a manufacturer. We're a job shop. We create those parts that you use in everyday life. Many parts that could go into like a Coke or Pepsi machine. It could go into something in a fast food restaurant for that favorite hamburger you're going to eat. Or it could be something that goes into a Caterpillar that's used for road repair that we all don't like. Or it could be a medical component that helps save lives. Or it could be a part for your Harley motorcycle, or medical, or aerospace. So I can tell you lots of different industries. We have a variety of customers, and they're all very unique, and I can tell you they all have struggled in the end of 2008 and all through 2009. And although it is better, we are not over the crisis yet. Our Permac goal is to focus on bringing more medical and aerospace type business to our company. That's one of the reasons I co-founded MedNet, which is Minnesota Valley Medical Manufacturers Network, in 2006, and I remain chair today. We at Permac are also working on our ISO 13485 certification for medical, and then we're going to jump directly into AS 9100, which is the certification needed for aerospace. We have a dedicated quality manager working on these projects with us, along with our continuous ISO 9001-2008, which we already have. In the beginning of 2008, we had close to 50 employees, and by the end of 2009, we had 23. It was very sad to let people go, and little did we guess that this recovery was going to take so long to come back. However, I'm happy to say that today we have 36 Permacians, as we like to call ourselves. Let's talk about a little bit about major Minnesota issues as I see them. First of all, let's move forward. Let's stop the over-regulation and the over-taxation in the state of Minnesota and create some jobs. We must work on becoming a more business-friendly state. We need state agencies who truly want to help us improve our companies. Regulation that involves obligations by business owners that are more disadvantageous than advantageous are job killers. These difficult regulations that frustrate us employers must go away so we can concentrate our efforts on growth. I question, why do we have to have a federal OSHA and a state OSHA program when one agency would suffice? Why do we have to have different federal and state rules? It makes it very time-consuming, very frustrating, and very inconsistent. We need the state to help us, not hinder us, by asking us, the small business employers who are struggling to create new business, and we want to hire new employees, to subsidize even higher taxes than we currently are held to. Small businesses have suffered the greatest casualties in the recent economic downturn. Another question I would have is, why do we have to pay sales tax on capital equipment and tooling and then maintain extensive records to request a refund from the state of Minnesota? Not only does this consume much of my internal accountant's time, but it's a very heavy burden on our cash flow. Not to mention that the fact that once we do all the proper paperwork, we have to wait for months to get a refund. We, the taxpayers, are paying people at the state level to re-review paperwork that could be approved on the front end, since we are openly audited on a continual basis. Raising taxes and fees and eliminating our tax incentives will not provide us with the competitive advantage that we need. We need to bring business to Minnesota, not drive it away. New business becomes Minnesota partner businesses. We all grow from bringing that entrepreneurial spirit to our state. In my business, equipment can easily cost us $350,000 to $500,000 or more. And I can tell you last year and this year are the only years that I'm not investing in new machines. Even though business is better, the fear of the unknown, whether it be taxes or regulations or healthcare, it strangles my growth. The corporate income tax I currently pay hinders me from being able to expand, innovate, and hire new employees. Taxing of small employers, S-corps, who report our business income as personal income will reduce the growth even more. We desperately need tax incentives so that we can continue to be the entrepreneurs who create the jobs and drive Minnesota's economy upward. Which brings me to Tom Emmer. I think our next governor should have first-hand knowledge of what it's like to get up every morning in this state and go to your office or to your plant and put a positive smile on your face, even though you wonder, when will it get better? To know the responsibility a business owner feels for their employees and their families. To understand how our employees really do depend and trust on us entrepreneurs to keep them employed. How they depend on us for growth and stability. It's a lot of responsibility. I do embrace this every day and I enjoy what I do. But I want our state to understand the importance of Minnesota business. I do believe Tom knows how I feel every day as he has walked in my shoes. I think Minnesota's next governor should understand firsthand what it means to make a payroll. Tom has done this. I think our governor should understand from personal experience how difficult it is not only to pay for your own health insurance and your families, but also your employees and their families. Tom has had a family business here in Minnesota for many years and also started his own company. I think Minnesota's governor needs to understand that Minnesota companies do care about their employees and families and want to grow to provide them with a wonderful, satisfying living here in this great state. I truly believe Tom Emmer, as our new governor, will lead us to a more business-friendly Minnesota. We must put our state back on the path to prosperity. What's good for small business is good for Minnesota. Tom, I believe you'll lead us in this upward path. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Darlene, and thank all of you. You've cluttered the podium so much with all your paraphernalia, I'll have to get mine out of here. Esme, thank you for taking leave from the fair to be here with us today. And Ted, the tracker, thank you for coming today. It's good to see you again. I've missed you the last couple of days. I want to thank Darlene. I really appreciate her kind introduction and her heartfelt words about what it's like to operate a business in this state. I take her concerns about the business climate in Minnesota to heart. And contrary to what she understands, I don't understand what it's like to stand in her shoes. I only know what it's like to stand in mine. But listening to her, I can tell that we have many similar feelings about responsibility, about making it to through a payroll on a Friday and understanding that maybe there are 2 more working days till Monday because nobody's guaranteeing us the next payroll. You know, as I listen to Darlene and her experience and look around here at what she's done and everyone else here has done at Permac Industries, I was reminded about what has been most frustrating during this campaign. No offense, but the media and the professional politicians keep on trying to make this election about what the candidates for governor are going to do for government, as if the most important problem in Minnesota is just balancing the books. But when I was listening to Darlene, I was reminded of why I am running for governor. Too many Minnesotans have lost their jobs, and even more are worried that their job might not be there next week or next month. We need to change that right now. The biggest problem we face is not that government has a budget deficit, but that Minnesota has a jobs deficit. That's why I'm here today to roll out our job creation agenda. I'm not here to tell you I can save or create some number of jobs. Governors and governments don't do that, whatever some like to say. What we can do is create a business climate that will lead to job creation, a business climate that will encourage and incent more people to do business in our great state. Businesses want to expand. They win by creating jobs, and we all win when they do. So what can government do to help businesses help the rest of us? Well, let me tell you what I plan to do as governor of this state. First, I will address Minnesota's business income tax. Did you know that Minnesota has the third highest corporate tax rate in the nation? This must change. I propose reducing the state's 9.8% corporate tax rate to 3% over the next 5 years. In the next 2 years alone, that will save employers $368 million. That's money they can use to expand their businesses and hire more employees. This will also send a strong message to venture capital the world over that Minnesota welcomes new investment and opportunity. My opponents will no doubt claim that government can't afford to cut corporate taxes by that much, but they just don't get it. Minnesotans can't afford a job-killing corporate tax rate of almost 10%. It can help people like Bernadette Perryman of C&L Distributing in central Minnesota. She employs 115 people currently, and she said that a reduction in her business taxes would mean she can purchase capital equipment, upgrades they need at C&L, and get to hiring again. We need Bernadette and the thousands of business owners around the state, like Darlene, creating jobs for working Minnesotans. Next, I propose tax cuts for small business. Most of our small businesses, and that's where most job creation takes place, don't pay the corporate income tax. They pay their taxes through the individual income tax rates. For them, we will provide an exclusion of 10% of their income from taxation so that they can reinvest that money into their business and start hiring again. This tax cut will put $158 million back into the pockets of our small business. Small businesses, entrepreneurs are always the ones who lead in job creation. Let's help them out and get this economy moving again. We hope this tax cut will help some of these small businesses today become some of our fastest growing businesses of tomorrow. You know, one of the things I hear all the time on the campaign trail from businesses large and small is how crippling the property tax burden can be. Unlike corporate taxes and income taxes, they have to pay the same whether they are making any money or not. That's why I'm also proposing that we reduce the statewide property tax by $50 million per year. That's $50 million a year that goes back directly to the bottom line. $50 million that businesses can use to expand, buy equipment, and hire new workers. Minnesota has been blessed with some of the smartest and most creative entrepreneurs, and we need to tap into that creative energy. Right now, Minnesota doesn't do well enough encouraging entrepreneurs to start their own businesses. According to the Kauffman Foundation, Minnesotans start businesses at half the rate of Texans or South Dakotans. That's simply not good enough. That's why I'm proposing expanding the Research and Development Tax Credit and the Angel Investor Tax Credit. Let's get capital to the next generation of high-tech businesses and start growing the next generation of high-quality jobs for our kids. I know some people will say that cutting business taxes is a tax cut for the rich, but they just don't get it. Raising taxes on businesses and entrepreneurs is a job cut for everybody else. There are a whole host of things we will do to make Minnesota more business-friendly. We need to reform regulations, as you heard Darlene talk about. Let's put a little common sense back into the process. We need to reform our educational system to ensure that our workforce is the best and the brightest in the world. And we need to reform our government itself so that it can live within our means. Doing all this will be a huge task, but it must be done. The alternative is watching Minnesota become less competitive every year, just when we need to do everything we can do to become more competitive. In this weak economy, most business owners and their employees are in a survival mode. We need to allow them to thrive again, not just survive. Good people like John Nockenmus of Ralco Nutrition in Marshall need tax cuts because they compete with countries and states with much lower tax burdens. And those states and countries are calling him all the time to recruit him to move out of Minnesota. John has said, if Minnesota raises taxes, Ralco would be forced to strongly consider moving to South Dakota. I believe our plan will deliver what Minnesotans need most right now: jobs. Mark Dayton's plan is to burden businesses with even more of what they don't need: even higher taxes, even more regulation, even bigger government. Tom Horner's plan is to tinker around the edges. He raises taxes now and promises tax cuts at some time in the future. We've all heard that before. There is nothing more permanent than a temporary tax increase in Minnesota. We cannot let Ralco or the thousands of other businesses that are just getting by think about even think about leaving Minnesota. Right now, they can't afford to stay here, and we can't afford to lose them. So let's do something about it. Starting next year, we will hang a sign at the border letting everyone know that Minnesota is open for business. Thank you so much for coming today, and if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer. Anybody from the media?
In the long term, you create it's a win-win, as you described, where you grow the jobs and increase government revenue as the economy turns around. But will that happen in time for this 5-month deadline you've got facing to constitutionally balance the budget?
I'm sorry, in this 5-month deadline?
Well, I mean, between the time you take office and May when the budget's due.
You know what, I think it can happen rather quickly. If you look at the experience, for instance, that they've had in Indiana. It's essentially been 4 or 5 years since that governor took the office, and with the legislature has done many of the same things we're talking about in Indiana. Today, Indiana is responsible for 7% of all the new jobs in the United States of America. Indiana is practicing this type of reform that we're talking about, creating a healthy business climate that not only creates an opportunity for existing employers to grow, but attracts new investment and new opportunity. And then, as you said, the idea is by growing jobs in your private sector, you will naturally grow revenue that drives what people expect to support the services that people expect from government. I mean, great example, if you look at Indiana, not that it's apples to apples, but you've got 3 states around it, Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, still practicing the tax and spend big government model of governing. They are slowly dying, and Indiana is blossoming. I think what we're proposing today is along those lines. It's time to give the entrepreneurs not only the encouragement, but the tools to start reinvesting in Minnesota, let them grow jobs in this state, because that's what we need most right now.
Representative, when you add up the numbers in the news release you folks put out today, there's about $626 million in these tax credits, tax cuts. How do you pay for that?
You know, it's funny. I thought it was a little higher than that, by the way. If you've got 626, I thought we were just a little bit higher than that.
What are you aiming for? What's the total number that you...
Well, I'm not aiming for anything other than doing what we need to do to get business moving again in the state of Minnesota. And the way I was going to respond to your question, twofold. One, only in government. I know the way we do accounting in government. That is when we tell the taxpayers, the hardworking men and women of this state, and the businesses, that you get to keep a little more money of yours to create new opportunity, that somehow that's an expense to government. I mean, that's just crazy the way that works, but that is the way they do it on the books. Minnesota is projected to have $2.8 billion in new revenues for the next governor and the next legislature, and this is well within that mark.
But if you have to come up with $5.8 billion to balance the budget in the next 2 years, you add $626 million, $700 million, $800 million to that, that just becomes almost $7 billion that you've got to come up with to balance the book.
Yeah, I'll say it again. What we're doing is we are budgeting from the point that we have today, rather than what government wants to spend. The $5.8 billion deficit is actually what government wants to spend. It wants to spend roughly $38 billion in the next biennium, when in fact we will have revenues more than we have in this biennium. We'll have almost 7.8% more in revenue to spend in the next biennium, but it's about $5.8 billion short of what government wants. So in reality, if we did not spend a nickel and we agreed we weren't going to change a thing, then theoretically 2 years from now Minnesota would have a surplus, not a deficit. People have to understand that deficit is created on paper because government's not satisfied with a 7 to 8% raise. Government wants a 17% plus raise. Guess what? Most families in Minnesota right now, most businesses in Minnesota would die to have a 7% increase in their revenues. And yet government's not satisfied unless it gets more than double that. That's where that's coming from. What we're suggesting is living within our means, having government live within its means with that new revenue that we're anticipating. This is more than covered within that new revenue.
It's not really clear from this proposal how you're holding down spending. You suggest there's a duplication within regulations. What exactly is it that you're talking about, and what kind of cost savings are you?
Yeah, well, you've heard some from Darlene today, but today we're rolling out our jobs creation proposal. We're not talking to you today, and we'll do more as we proceed about the actual redesign of government, but one of the complaints I've heard from you guys is, Tom, you keep talking about changing government agencies and reducing here and doing, but that won't solve our ultimate problem. So what I did today is the first part of our plan is this is going to get Minnesota moving again. You allow Minnesotans, small business owners, entrepreneurs in Minnesota to keep more of their hard-earned dollars. Don't assume they're just going to take that money and run out of Minnesota. You are going to give them the opportunity to grow their business and add new employees. And at a time when a lot of Minnesotans aren't even lucky enough to have a job. You know, I talked to somebody the other day whose husband's been out of work for over a year. These people are hungry. They're looking for work. Minnesota is a great place to live because it used to provide not only the quality of life that comes with the wonderful seasons that we have in Minnesota and all the natural resources, but because we could provide a good paying job that families were able then to provide the quality of life that they've come to expect. We need to get back to providing those jobs. That's what this is about.
Representative Permack has...
Esme.
Yeah, let me ask you just to follow up on Mark's question. When, you're going to unveil the rest of the pieces of your plan over the next couple of weeks, is that right?
We'll keep doing it a little piece at a time.
Because the big piece I think people want to wonder, or really wonder about, is how are you going to balance that? When are those specifics going to come out?
Well, Esme, I can only say this so many times. You know, you've got two other people that have put out plans. I could show you one. It's 3 pages and a paragraph. You know what? Mine, that I have put in front of all of you today, I went to the Department of Revenue and I said, please run these numbers. Tell me what this is going to be. Tell me that it's doable so that we have the actual backup to show you. Guess what? The Dayton plan says we don't have the computer modeling to show that what we're proposing will work. I challenge Mark Dayton, take it to the Department of Revenue. They do have the computer modeling. They can do it for you and then show Minnesota that your plan works. Tom Horner's provided an outline that everybody seems to think is a plan. By the way, he's included as part of his budget balancing act, he's included the $1.8 billion in the education shift. You don't get to count it twice. You only get to count it once and you got to pay it back. Now these are things that we'll start putting out, but Esme, when you get right down to it, there's only one solution for the future of this state. That solution is to get back to growing jobs like this state used to do better than any other state in the union. You got to start growing your private sector economy. If you grow jobs in this state, you will create the revenues that then will pay for the great things that we all expect government to provide. You can do all the redesign you want. You can reduce the size of government all you want, but you gotta get your private economy moving or it will all be for naught. It won't matter.
I'm just curious about the timeline though for your other pieces.
Well, it'll come out. We'll call you when we're bringing them out.
You mentioned the payment delay to schools. Does your plan include that delay?
We'll be releasing an education plan and we'll have that in there. You'll see that very soon.
Permack has benefited.
Yeah, Jeff.
You know how many of the personal income taxpayers in Minnesota are S corps?
No.
Or how
I didn't bring that with me. That's
how many jobs the S corps provide versus the C corps?
all I know. I can tell you this: the number that's been floated to me, and maybe one of these guys has a different one, is that approximately 80% of our workforce in the state of Minnesota goes to work in a business that has 200 employees or less.
And that qualifies as S corp?
No, not necessarily. I mean, my understanding is you could have all the way down to the 1 or 2 person shop up to DigiKey, which is in Thief River Falls, that I think still operates perhaps as a sole proprietorship.
Just $1 billion.
Which is $1 billion company.
Representative, this morning the DFL put out a statement that said the jobs that were added here came through the federal stimulus plan. Could you address that, or Ms. Miller, is that correct?
It's Darlene's business. I'll let her.
And if it's correct, how can we support Mr. Emmer, who's been quoted as saying he's opposed to the federal stimulus?
The jobs we have here have not come through the federal stimulus plan. We have never received any federal stimulus money or employees whatsoever through that program. We do use the local workforce through Dakota County and their program, and have hired an employee through that program who actually is trained through the workforce, and then we put them through a 10-week training program here. So we spend quite a bit here to train those people and then determine if we want to keep them as an employee, and we did keep him as an employee.
So one of your 13, you said you added 13 in the last year, I think it was.
No, we have 36 employees,
right.
One of those employees.
You were down to 23.
Right.
But you added 13.
Right.
Of those 13, just one
No, none of them came from federal.
None of them came from federal stimulus. This is the local.
No, none of them came from federal stimulus.
Not indirectly.
Subsidized jobs program.
The workforce program through the county.
But isn't that subsidized by the federal government?
I think what Darlene just told you is they work with the workforce development program, Dakota County. They've done it in the past, they'll do it in the future. That's one of the things that one of the places she uses to get employees.
Representative Emerald,
Yep.
the 8% increase or 7.8% increase in revenue, you say that that's enough to cover what the state needs. Does that bring this total state size of the budget to
I'm sorry.
$32 billion?
I'm sorry, Brian, where'd you get that?
You were talking about the natural growth in revenue. that
But
the
where did you
state
get
is-
7 to 8% in natural growth of revenue?
You said the state is on course to have 7 or 8% more revenue.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So does that
Yep, I got you.
decide
I got you.
if that's the ceiling as to how far you're willing to go? Does that bring it to $32 billion as to a budget we might see under administration?
No, I'm not willing to give you that, no. You'll get the other pieces as we go forward. What we've given you today is roughly, what did you say, 620-some million?
I just kind of have the numbers in here.
Yeah,
Do you know,
I did too, but I put it down below.
do you know the rest of the portions of your budget? I mean, are they prepared and you're not releasing them at this time?
Brian, you'll see them when we have them out. Today we're here to talk about what's going to get jobs moving again in the state of Minnesota. And we've given you some very specific items, and I would challenge my colleagues to do the same, because the one plan is just taxing small businesses to a level that will drive more businesses out of the state of Minnesota, eliminate more opportunities. And the other one isn't even a plan. The other one, if you take a look at it, the so-called outline, it has $2.15 billion in new taxes. If you take a look at it, and I hope people do start to scrutinize the outline, you're going to lower the sales tax by a point, and you're going to spread it across all kinds of new things. In order to even get close to the number that he's proposing, you have to tax garage sales. You have to tax the kid in the neighborhood who's mowing your yard. You have to tax haircuts. You have to tax grandma's walker. I mean, you guys, when you start looking at it, the only plan that is proposed that actually we can back up with fact to create jobs in this state of Minnesota is the one we just gave you. And again, I challenge both of the other candidates. Take your so-called plans and run them over to the Department of Revenue and have them actually run the numbers, because they can. That's exactly what we did. Our numbers are backed up and they're checked. This is what we propose doing to get jobs flowing again in the state of Minnesota.
But that doesn't really make sense if you don't see both sides of the balance sheet, right? And we don't know what things are going to have to get cut in order to accommodate that.
You guys are so impatient.
You know,
Just if you want to cut. I mean, I'll give all of you a hug before we go, but it's coming. It's coming. You know, I told you back in July and then in August, I don't want to peak on September 6th. I want to peak on November 2nd. You got to see the so-called plans that other people are putting out. It's business as usual in the state of Minnesota. And when you look at them, they call them plans. One's an outline, one's a 3-page, my computer can't back up my numbers, but this is what I do plan. You know what? We're going to give you specifics all the way through. I've been talking in those 30,000-foot terms now and been dying to start doing this. Believe me, you know, when you come in and you ask questions, I want to be able to say, here's what we're going to do with the corporate income tax. Here's what we're going to do for the small business owners, the closely held corporations. Here's what we're going to do. You know, you got one guy who talks about creating an exemption for capital expenditures. Well, we already have one. The problem isn't that we don't have an exemption for capital equipment expenditures. The problem is that we ask our great business owners like Darlene, and she told you what the problem was. We ask her to buy the equipment, pay the tax on the equipment, and then hire somebody in the office to do all the paperwork and the accounting to apply to have their money back while the government floats the loan over a period of months. That's got to end. That's got to end. You want to get Minnesota moving again, you got to give people like Darlene more of her money today, and she told you very directly, this is hers, right here. This is what she's created for not herself, but for this whole community and for this state. And she's asking, like many other businesses that we see every day in this state, for the opportunity to grow this bigger, to give more people the opportunity to enjoy the success that she's created here. That's what we're trying to do, and that's why this is the jobs creation agenda that actually works, and it's backed up by the computer modeling that the Department of Revenue has run through and told us, yes, these numbers work. So please use this as the start, and we'll keep giving you more pieces as we go forward. Thank you.
Is part of the government community's 21st century tax commission?
You know, some of them may be in there. I have no idea. I'm not going off Governor Paulini's playbook.
Representative, if this is you're celebrating this plan very much, but why are you releasing it on a holiday? I mean, it's not really.
You don't recognize the significance of a jobs plan on Labor Day? I mean, to me.
The press conference you had on a holiday, you sort of like things.
Well, no. This is about creating jobs, and what better day to do it? You know, when you sit back looking at the calendar in June and July, what better day to start talking about how we give the hardworking families in this state a better opportunity for a better job? Why not do it on Labor Day? Because we're talking about jobs all over this state, and this will get the money moving again if we just allow them to do what they do best, which is create opportunity. That's what we're proposing.
If I could just ask Ms. Norris a quick question. According to a press release put out by President Bush in 2008, your company really benefited from the original stimulus plan. And I just want to clarify the second stimulus plan. You're saying that you only got one employee out of this? Is that right, Ms. Miller?
No, she didn't get any federal stimulus dollars, is what she said.
No.
Well, according to a 2008 press release, though, from the Bush White House, from that stimulus plan, President Bush took credit for helping engage your business.
This is Section 179.
That plan was exactly what we're talking about here. It was tax incentives to get business growing again.
Right.
She used the expansion of the 179. Is that?
Yeah, the Section 179.
So I'm just trying to see, in terms of federal stimulus plans over the past couple of years, I'm just trying to see where you benefit and where you haven't. So you're saying in the 2008 one, that did help?
She used the tax incentives to.
Every business used Section 179 to save tax dollars.
Right. It's just if you purchase equipment, that's strictly it.
Okay. But you're saying and I'm sorry, I don't have the names on these individuals. Sorry. Carl, okay. And I just on this last one, you're just saying that's flat out wrong, that you have not gotten any federal stimulus money at all.
No.
From the
correct.
economic
That is
program.
correct.
When did the subsidized jobs money come?
Thank you. Thanks. Really appreciate you coming.